The shift to remote and hybrid work over the past 2 years has accelerated application development on cloud infrastructure. However, securing these new assets has lagged behind. Qualys CloudView, the next generation cloud security posture management, delivers an end-to-end multi-cloud security and compliance solution encompassing the entire application lifecycle from build to runtime. CloudView enables enterprises to assess their cloud security and compliance posture, identify risks and gaps, auto-remediate issues, proactively enforce best practices, and prove compliance and audits rapidly and efficiently. Identify your most vulnerable cloud assets by visiting securityweekly.com/Qualys.
It's time to rethink how we approach cybersecurity because the reality is modern cyber attackers are already past your initial defenses. XtraHop helps your security team find and eradicate advanced threats before real damage is done. Protect your enterprise and customers with better defense. Learn more about how XtraHop stops advanced threats at securityweekly.com/XtraHop. That's extra HOP.
According to the 2022 Data Breach Investigations Report, 82% of breaches involve the human element. Yet most security awareness and training programs focus on compliance requirements, not the risk humans pose to your organization. Living Security is the leader in human risk management. This new approach transforms human risk into proactive defense by quantifying human risk. By understanding your riskiest and most vigilant users and activities, you can engage these segments of your workforce with relevant training, communications, and policies to truly change their behaviors. If your goal is to finally change your workforce's behavior, visit securityweekly.com/living security to learn more today. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Tyler Robinson. Security Weekly listeners, we need to hear your voices. Leave us your feedback on Apple Podcasts and submit a screenshot to our giveaway for a chance to win a $100 gift card from Hacker Warehouse. This giveaway will be open until the end of the year. We appreciate your honest feedback so we can continue to make great content for our audience. Visit securityweekly.com/giveaway to enter. This segment is sponsored by XtraHop. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/XtraHop. Rafal is an industry innovator, strategist, and personality. His career spans 25 years working on both the vendor and consumer side of the table. Raf's passion and focus is in the strategic services, building, optimizing, and delivering services that drive tangible value. Raf is also an active member of the Security Advisor Alliance, serving on the advisory board with the intent of creating innovative ways for security leaders to give back to their communities through service and knowledge sharing. Additionally, Raf is a founder and host of Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast, an industry podcast delivering a weekly office-friendly format since 2011, focused on thought leadership through interesting guests and topics. Raf, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Yeah. Good Lord, I need to have marketing people work on that bio, huh?
I know, but it was such good stuff. I love your office-friendly podcast because on Wednesday nights, ours isn't so office-friendly in Paul's original show called Paul Security Weekly. So,
yeah, look, when that thing started, there were a couple of really good podcasts. Most of them you couldn't listen to at the office, so I figured somebody's got to do it. Might as well be me.
Absolutely. Well, welcome. A colleague from the podcast side. We'd love to bring on other podcasters and do this. But you're at XtraHop now running their services strategy, and we're going to talk a little bit today about, like, I called this the Manage XDR segment because it's like all the things people want to do, but they really probably can't do it because they don't have the people, process, or budgets to do it. So let's start with the big picture, right? Which is, we hear the term extended detection and response, but to actually do it requires a lot. And there's a lot of steps and challenges there. Let's start with some of those challenges and, like, what does it really mean to deploy XDR?
I think that depends on, like, who your guidepost for this is, and which analysts you read, and how much you dislike yourself. But look, XDR, I think fundamentally is I don't know. I think it's if I want, it might be a little bit graphically colorful here in my marketing speak. It is where security is always needed to go. We've tended to talk about, like the network being the authority on what happens outside of the endpoint, and the endpoint being the authority on, processes and memory and all that stuff. That's the local artifacts. But we've treated them differently. And various vendors over the years have tried to consolidate that, right? And with various degrees of, I'm not going to use the word success, but various degrees of achievement, shall we say? And we, look, XDR is the culmination of I think the recognition that what we've been doing up till now hasn't worked real well, and so it's time to try something a little bit different. The challenge becomes, extended detection. What the hell does extended mean? Well, it means looking at multiple places where you have telemetry and actually sticking them together. You got the I'm going to start owing Anton royalties for using this, but the security triad, right? The endpoint, the network, and then the analytics, and then the various things that the network and the endpoints and software and various pieces of infrastructure tell you about what's going on that we've just not listened to really well over the years. Like we've correlated things, but it's not been wonderful.
Yeah, so in order for you to have XDR, does that mean that you need to be a little bit further down your security roadmap model so that you have good telemetry from each of these places that you're trying to correlate?
Yeah, so I love that you asked that, because where we started in security a long time ago, when nobody logged anything, is we started telling people, just log everything, log everything, send it to this wonderful device I have called a SIM. It will find all the bad things.
Don't worry turned out the SIM was that $1 million Splunk bill either. That's no.
Yeah, right. Well, it turned out that there was a couple of vendors that would love you for it. That one being one of them. Also, the ones that sold you the disk hardware, would you stuck all that? But like the SIMs got really good at Like I imagine. So guys, for those of you that are not old enough to remember this reference, I'm sorry. Go look it up. I just imagine like whoever invented the SIM was a big Sam Kinison fan. Because what the SIM was really good at is, it's all broken! Like, it's screaming at you all the time, red-faced, and you're like, I've gotten 7 million alerts, it's 7:30 p.m. on a Friday, snooze, I'll get to it Monday. Like, that's what people did with SIMs.
So, Raf, I used to have this kind of debate with Anton, that like the SIM wasn't built to solve a security problem, it was built to solve a compliance problem. And he 100%. Right? And he's like, no, it was meant to solve security. I said, then if it was built to solve security, then I didn't need the Splunks of the world to come into the space to actually solve the security side of the problem, because the traditional SIMs before that couldn't do it, right? Back to your point. Yeah. They weren't built that way. They weren't built to solve all the security incident and use cases, even if they were logging everything, which they weren't. And so
yeah.
I agree with you. What we've traditionally been doing has been broken. I guess the question is, for people who want to solve it, like, what do they actually need to do to solve it? Because I think there are organizations out there that really want to solve this problem, but they don't know. Are they going to piece it together themselves? Are they going to go hire a staff and build out their advanced SOC? Like, we saw this.
I hear how you're teeing this up, and I appreciate you putting the ball on the tee for me. This is no look. Let me take a step back from and address kind of what you were saying. I think there's two types of companies right now out there. Those that have a north of $100 million security budget, and those that should not be building their own SOC. That's my stand. Like there are a lot of organizations that I have talked to in the last, let's call it 10 years. Let's give it a limit. Where, heck, over the last 4 years, that have told me, I'm building a SOC, I'm going to hire a team, and I do the same thing every time. I politely roll my eyes because, and it's not to be mean or anything, but like if you're at that point where you're like, I'm going to go build a SOC, you've clearly not looked around the space very much, because hiring those people is very difficult. The startup cost for a reasonable SOC is extremely high. And so if you're going to piece it together, let's start there. If you're going to piece it together, you have to have some level of security maturity, which means, to me, I'm observing network, I'm observing endpoint, I'm observing applications, I'm observing identities. I can stitch it all together. I don't know, simple but really, really difficult things like it's all time synced. And that makes me laugh every time I say that, because I can't tell you how many investigations that I've been in the periphery of that become impossible because everything is off by like some number of seconds, right? And at the speed we're looking at things, right? Millions of events, a second or two makes it real hard to figure out what's going on. So if you're going to piece it together, you need some level of maturity. You need a good amount of staffing. You need to have technology in place that allows you to, I'd say, report on the things that we find valuable from an investigative perspective, but also from a detective perspective. I just rhymed. Wow. And maybe a detection perspective. And so that maturity is important, but that maturity is something I think the industry has demonstrated is very difficult to get, because it requires a lot of care and feeding of the zoo, and we're just not good at that, right? I feel like SecOps is a thing that is like the dirty redheaded stepchild of the of security teams, because everybody wants to, everybody gets to do the enterprise architecture and engineering, and those are the fun functions that get to go home at night. The ops people are in 100% DEFCON 1. They're always on, they're always getting called, and the fatigue sets in and they're out. And then new people come in and you train them, you get them familiar with your tools and your infrastructure, you burn them out, rinse and repeat. So if you're going to piece it together, you need maturity, you need visibility. I use the word observability because I've seen it used it quite a bit too. You need to be able to see into your processes, your identities, your applications, your network, your endpoints, right? Your data. You need to know where your data is to some extent. And then if you're going to try to look at from a provider perspective, which is where I think everybody else goes, it has to be more than the MDR space provides today, right? And it definitely has to be more than the XDR vendors, this now with XDR stickers that we saw slapped on old vendors from at Black Hat and RSA, because some of those were of the "are you kidding me" variety, and that was interesting. So yes, maturity, I think, is, to sum it up, maturity is important. Having telemetry is important. Having the infrastructure maturity and people is really important too.
I mean, Rob, isn't this the same struggle we've had for the last, I don't know how many decades, though? It's where we're really bad. And we say it on the show all the time. Say easy, do hard. We need to get good at doing the hard things in order for any strategy to be successful. Whether it was the old SIMSOC model or now the XDR model, the technologies are going to progress, innovation is going to constantly happen. But if we're not doing the hard things, we're always going to fail.
Yeah. Look, the hard things, it turns out, are hard because for a long time, we chased shiny new boxes. We chased buzzwords. And I don't know how we got there, right? There's the pragmatist in me says there's no way that should have happened. And it did. I think what you've got now is some vendor consolidation. You've got kind of the mechanics are right for the market conditions are right for that kind of strange little moment where you're in the eye of the storm. You're like, the weather's actually kind of nice, and like 7 seconds later, the cow flies by because you're actually standing in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane. I think we have a moment of clarity right now. We need to do the difficult things, which is understand where our limitations are. That's a hard thing to do, right? No, you're not going to be able to control every device on your network. I know we'd like to. I also know that we've been trying to since I got into field, which was, let's just say, mid to late 90s, a long time ago. And that was when things were actually in an office, right? On like 2 or 3 switches, maybe across multiple floors. Maybe you had a T1 going out to the internet. Now, get out of here. That world is a long and distant memory. I long for those days because I actually had some vision of control. Now, nope. So, look, everything, like this industry has a habit of saying things are just do the basics, just do the easy things. They're like, yeah, but we've been doing the easy things for 25 years. Yep. They're not easy.
Right. That's it. Do the hard things. Get the foundation solid.
I think the XDR piece too, right, really comes down to, you're kind of spot on. XDR is fundamentals, right? You're getting telemetry from all the places. You're putting it into a central location that you know about for devices that you know as you have inventory, and then you're doing the collaboration and correlation of that data properly. So, getting back to the fundamentals, but really doing that where we're eating this slowly and not trying to find the one blinky box and do this all in one bite. We really have to have a strategic being the key word there, roadmap in order to build to those optimum points of telemetry and collection and then mitigation and remediation. That's all part of the plan.
And Tyler, to that point, though, also buy-in from the other stakeholders of the business, because you have to be able to classify those assets, know where the high risk is, know where all of the crown jewels are that you need to be. We have to have buy-in from the other stakeholders too, in coordination around the business.
But we've gotten better about that, right? Like we are much more business savvy. I think the good security people and the people in leadership roles that are doing good security are business savvy, and they're having those conversations now. Yeah. Now, I don't think that's everybody.
That's what we want, yes.
What's funny is as we talk about knowing where your data is, who owns it, like being good data custodians, that sounds like a fantastic idea. We should have done that many, many years ago, and we didn't because we didn't need to. Now that we need to, it's a really hard problem to solve. Without using DRM, and God help us if we try to go back there. What's interesting is there's I have this habit of saying like the security of any platform is inversely proportional to how many times the operator or analyst has to hit Alt Tab to get between screens. Right, so the more screens you have to sift through, the less of a chance you have to finding anything bad. Now, that being said, right? So I'm a platforms guy. I prefer to have as many things into one visual processing and data processing place, call it an engine or a plane, as possible. Now, that said, I'm also not delusional in thinking that any one of those will solve the grand problem. But guys, I think at the root of this is, I don't know if it's arrogance. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is, but the old joke is an XKCD comic about this, where people are complaining about having too many standards and too many different competing standards in security, so they all got together and created another standard. This is a problem. Like, show me data normalization across multiple different. A way to normalize data and a way to talk about the models for users, applications, access, identity, network traffic, application performance, like all these things across different different platforms. It doesn't exist. So now we're stuck cobbling it together, which is where I think this is where we come back to the XDR conversation. And that is, we have an opportunity, I think now, with machine learning models and algorithms being where they are in terms of maturity and capability, to start to do some stuff that we can't do as a manual analyst or as a human. So we've tried doing it all by hand. That failed. We've tried saying AI, ML, magic machines, and math will solve the problem. We know that's malarkey. So somewhere in the middle is people doing amazing things with their brains and then using technology to both rapidly scale their ability to review massive amounts of data, but also look through. And this is one of those things that I'll talk about us for a second. Like, one of those things that people love about us is that we have this ability to look at 100 gigabyte network segment and say, here's all the things talking to each other in this nice statistical model. Here's what they usually do. Here's how they usually behave. Here's what they usually say to each other. And, well, that's weird. Like, this packet just shot by, and that's kind of abnormal. Like, somebody should go look at that, right? That's not the machine saying, hey, I know what it is. It's this, this, and this. It's saying, that doesn't fit the model. Something's weird. Hey, human, go take a look at this. Let me know if I can get you data. And I think that's where the XDR possibilities may lie ahead of us, is using sort of the advancements that machine learning and algorithms can bring us at massive scale to sift through humongous amounts of data to go find not the pattern-based stuff that we know we can find, but being able to detect algorithmically anomalies that don't look right. Right. And I know what you're thinking. Some of you guys are thinking that, hey, look, we've tried that in the early 2000s. It just blew up everything. Right. And what if the network you're plugging into isn't clean on day one? Well, okay. Like, there's no winning everything. But I think XDR can actually get reasonably close if we understand the purpose we're trying to do. We're not trying to solve world hunger here, and we're not trying to identify all the unknown unknowns. We are trying to get to which one of these is not like the other, and then pass it off to another system or another person to go investigate. What do you guys think?
So I loved your semantic reference from circa 2000, because they were going to build the fabric that tied all this stuff together. I remember sitting in a conference room in Cleveland listening to the future of where semantic was going. It obviously didn't materialize. I guess my question becomes, you brought up pieces, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Closed versus open XDR. But my guess is, in order to do this, there has to be some openness of this data sharing from these different sources to be able to bring all this data together. I guess my question is, who builds the analytics platform, right? Is it a combination of analytics platform? Is there one Uber analytics platform? Because I think that's where this gets down to, right? Everybody's going to go after the analytics platform play, I think, right? Is you give me all your data and I'll munge it with my data, and I will be the provider of all the analytics that the human should look at. And that's where I see this going, and that gets a little dangerous, I think.
Isn't that what hybrid threat intelligence is trying to do? Or managed threat intelligence, or whatever they're calling it now?
Yeah, I'm not touching that one. To your question about it, I think actually where the power center is going to be for these is like where the providers are going to be. What's going to make or break them is their ability to take. And I'll use an example of a conversation I recently had with a provider where they take like our network telemetry and all the detections that we can do, some endpoint EDR platform and all the detections they can do, cross-correlate and analyze those with all the other things that they get data from, but also take the raw from each of these, stick them together into their own engine, and find things where like 1 + 1 = actually 3, where you're finding things that you wouldn't see otherwise. And how do you make any of these particular technologies, whether it's on the endpoint, whether it's in the identity space, whether it's on the applications, whether it's on the network, how do you take any one of them and make them better as a whole without building another SIEM?
Right.
And I think the answer is, at least part of the answer is better enabled humans. So we went from the SIEM will solve it to the analyst will solve it. I think the answer is somewhere in between those two things. And that's how I think that's That's how I think that market's going to differentiate. It's going to differentiate by identifying some really companies that can do really, really good analytics on somebody else's data and their own, and then have the superhumans in the actual analyst chair that can understand the output and then actually go identify threats that you don't see from either or any of those other ones individually.
Yeah,
So
which means
these superhumans, Raf, don't they have to start to understand the business as well?
And
Don't
this
they
is where,
have to have
right?
different
So
context? So not just a technical body, right, but someone who's been embedded in business and can understand the business outcomes, business effects, and how it's going to.
this is why I said you like you guys, a lot of us know who they are. There's so many rent-a-socks out there that, like, take a cert, leave college, we'll make you a SOC analyst, you'll be awesome. Nope, that's not how it works. Because then you become really good at doing what the computer tells you, and then you're not really actually useful, right? So I think, much like a lot of us in our careers, that have settled, you start at like the enterprise side or the user side. You go to the vendor for a bit, and you go to consult for a bit, and then you go back to the enterprise, and you go to a vendor and like consult. You have that like worldly perspective. Here's the limitations of all of this. The limitations of all this, I think, end at the door to the company. And here's what I mean by that. The advantages of having an in-house SOC, it is not a given. I'll start there. But the advantages to having an in-house SOC is they are supposed to understand the business, Jason. And that's the thing. I have talked to far too many that have no idea what the company does. And so like they'll say that's not a given. But the advantage they have potentially over a managed service or a partner provider is that partner provider will potentially struggle to understand context of why is that system talking to that system in that manner. That's in everywhere else that's unusual. Why is that normal for you? The catch is when I said, have these great analytics platforms, incorporating context, localized customer context into these is going to make or break this. That's where I think the evolutionary step is looking at a Hadoop, the output of a Hadoop cluster with asking a bunch of questions of it and getting a bunch of data back. That's one thing. Couching it in terms of what does that company actually do, and oh yeah, by the way, those Windows 95 systems talking SMBv1, yeah, those are okay because that they are still doing that and there's a business purpose. God help you, right? And so when is when doing AppSec, when is a vulnerability a critical vulnerability, not a critical vulnerability, right? It's context. The word that you're looking for there is context,
right?
And the problem is at like massive scale, the big IT outsourced SOC as a service providers can't do that because they have so many customers, they have so many large they lose their scale and frankly their costs start to go up when they start to get too embedded. The small ones are embedded, but they can't do the big thing, so they never quite. So there's like this space in the middle, and I've seen a couple that are. I'm partnering with a couple that are getting pretty close. It's actually a really exciting time to be in the vendor provider adjunct to the managed provider market right now, because I think the industry, I really do feel, I think the industry is undergoing what I can only describe as a very painful evolution. Look, we all hated our managed service providers in the 90s, early and mid 2000s for the same reason. They all sucked in the exact same reason. Right? You'd call them, they'd be like, who are you? Why are you calling me? Oh, right, this ticket. Yeah, this ticket says you've got this and this. You're like, no, that's not actually, that's okay. They're like, no, but it's bad. You're like, no, it's not bad. It's okay. No, it's bad. You're like, stop arguing with me. It's my network, right? We are seeing the evolution past that. And I'd love to say that it's technology based, but it's technology driven, and the king maker here is context.
Yeah, and I think what we know over the last 10 years is that the product by itself isn't going to solve this, right? We've tried and failed. And over the last 2 years,
Many times.
we know the challenges of the skill set and the hiring and the other things. And so what I took away is if you want to operationalize XDR, it's not a product offering, it's more of a product and service offering. You have to combine those elements, because product by itself and the challenges with the skill set are going to be big barriers for anybody outside of the Uber, Fortune 100 kind of players, because there's just not enough budget to be able to solve both of those at the same time.
And then this is in security. I hate that we have to say this, but in security, if you can't hire the best, don't bother with the rest, because you're actually just adding risk and you're being complacent about it, right? It's like, I can't buy, I can't afford like a 24/7 sock, so 8x5 is fine. Like, no, it's actually not. That's actually terrible, right? You're better off getting a 24/7 provider that's like, decent than no after hours coverage, because I don't know of a single threat actor that's like, oh, you guys are off work now? Okay, cool. I'll come back in the morning. Like, do you guys remember those? Do you remember the Wile E. Coyote cartoons where like Wile E. Coyote and the dog that was protecting the sheep would clock in and clock out at the same time? Like, that's not a thing. Right? Like the folks from Russia they're coming after your bank or your critical infrastructure or your whatever, they're not like, oh, okay, well, the Americans are logging in now, time to keyboard up. Like, no, that's not it at all.
Maybe the exact opposite.
I'd argue the exact opposite. Yeah, they troll the internet, look at your Facebook group and figure out where you're going on vacation, and then that's when they all get together and cause havoc.
Speaking of vacation, I think you're about ready to go on one. Raf, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Awesome joining you guys, and let's hope that this is the stake in the ground where the industry starts to solve some real problems and we get over it. Because if not, the next 10 years is gonna suck.
Get another 20 years.
Yeah. Enjoy.
I don't want to be around that long in this industry, guys. I love you all, but I'm getting too old for this crap.
I guarantee you right now, I won't.
Nice.
Raf, enjoy your vacation, please.
Thank you, guys.
If you want to learn how to operationalize XDR or want to learn more about XtraHop, please visit securityweekly.com/XtraHop. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.